We know that success in the food system isn't just about growing food, it's about connecting the dots. People, programs, services, infrastructure, all of it matters. This session brings together the folks who are making these connections happen, from labor to logistics, funding to technical support. We're looking at what it takes to create a truly coordinated system that works for RGV producers and communities. That's why we thought there was no one better to moderate this panel than Ana Alicia Perez, who is the program manager at the Texas A&M AgriLife Research, where she leads outreach and communications for the Rio Grande Colonias USDA Regional Food Business Center. With a background in English, communications, and psychology, and expertise spanning marketing, program development, and partnership building, Ana Alicia plays such a key role in connecting communities to resources that strengthen regional food systems. As the moderator of this panel, she brings a deep understanding of the people, programs, and infrastructure driving food systems across the RGV. Please welcome Coordinating People, Services, and Infrastructure for Success.
All right, I think folks are moseying back in from the break. While they're doing that, we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions for our wonderful panelists. Thank you all for being here in the audience. I know we'll have more people in a second. And thank you to each of our panelists for taking time out of your day and your schedules to be here with us and share some of your expertise and your experience within the food system. So we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions. We have some wonderful folks up here, some great diversity among each of our speakers. So we'll go ahead and get started with you, Hilda. If you can share a little bit about your role at Feeding Texas and how that relates to coordination within the food system.
Right. Hello, everybody. All right, cool. Hi, I'm Hilda Gutierrez. I'm the VP of Partnerships and Strategic Initiatives at Feeding Texas. And I've been working, I wanted to say, this week is my 10-year anniversary working in food systems. I know, it's pretty awesome. So previous to that, I worked in addressing gender-based violence, and so this is my second career, and I'm super excited, to be here sharing that with y'all. Also because, like many families from this area, my family are farm workers, and so definitely grew up playing in the fields, and this is some work that's very deep to my heart. So really just wanted to share that. And in terms of our work at Feeding Texas and how our role in coordination within food systems is, well, we're the largest hunger relief organization in the state of Texas. We have 20 food banks in the state. The food banks cover every single county. Last year alone, we provided 701 million pounds of food to Texans that were in need. We do emergency food assistance as well as disaster relief. But I think that the other component of our work that is not there is that we do economic justice work as well. And I'll talk about that later on. But glad to be here with y'all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hilda. Lynn, if you'd like to share a little bit about what you do and how your work relates to the coordination we're doing within the food system. And I know you're the first part of that process. So.
Yes. So my name is Lynn Sines, and I have a small farm with my grandparents, and we raise a small amount of cattle. And on top of that, I'm also working with some local farmers in the RGV area to bring a meat processing facility, RGV Meat Producers, coming soon. And so I'm kind of the start of, I guess, the trying to get money in and bringing a startup business to the area. So
Awesome. Thank you, Lynn. And Laura Holbrook, if you'd like to tell us from the city of Brownsville, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your role at the city of Brownsville and how that relates to coordination.
Sure. So I work I'm the Recreation Inclusion Coordinator for the City of Brownsville Parks and Rec. So I work directly with the community. And so that's the senior community, the youth community, our special needs community. So we are that bridge to assist folks to those things that they might need that they don't may not have access to. So we provide meals to seniors for free for 60 and older in our programming. We also feed our after-school kids a meal before they go home for the day. And so we have a lot of opportunities to get resources back to those families that maybe they may not have access to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. And last but certainly not least, Jose, if you'd like to introduce yourself, share a little bit about your work and how that relates to coordination.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jose Aguirre. I work at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Advancement. And you've heard a little bit about the work that the university is doing at the Hub of Prosperity and helping to coordinate events like this one. But we're also a key partner on the Regional Food Business Center, which is a new USDA program. It's launching this year for our region. And together with a few other key partners that are joining me on stage here today, we are planning and implementing a pretty big program that requires a lot of collaboration and coordination across different areas and partnerships and different expertise. So I'm a program manager, and that makes me kind of like, I guess, a counterpart to Analicia. She's with A&M, I'm with UTRGV, but there's a lot of coordination happening between the partners and just working with, a lot of the work I do is also the client-facing case management and coordination and outreach. So I guess that's why I'm here today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jose. And you've probably heard the Rio Grande Colonias Regional Food Business Center mentioned a few times today. You might have stopped by our booth outside. How many of you are familiar in the audience with that program? Raise your hand. You've heard of us, you kind of know. Okay, so we've got a little less familiarity. Really quickly, that program, like Jose was saying, one of the three main pillars of it is coordination. There's a grant-making piece, there's a technical assistance component, but coordination is another big part of that. Jose, when we say coordination within the food system, what do we mean? What are we trying to address with coordination?
I think it's the idea that a food system can be a very complex thing. It has a lot of moving parts. The nodes and the links between those nodes are all their own individual relationships. And so I think coordination in this context means connecting the dots, making sure that there's a regional focus a little bit as well, trying to understand that each unique region has its own unique needs. And so we can't just have a food system that looks the same everywhere. And it's about connecting the dots, understanding what's there, where are the gaps, so that we can try to address those gaps. And I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Jose. So we'll move into our first coordination. So like you're saying, coordination is key to a well-functioning food system, right? It's how do we get farmers in better dialogue with distributors and co-packers and distribution channels, and what goes beyond that, right? Coordination channels from distribution to markets. But it's often challenging, right? So what examples can any of our guests on the stage share of effective collaboration between agencies, nonprofits, farmers and ranchers, or other providers in the RGV or beyond that have made a real difference, a real impact?
So for us, we really would not be able to do the programming that we had without our partners. And the partners that would be like the Brownsville Wellness Coalition, AgriLife, 4-H. We're actually a 4-H chapter. So having those connections and those partners to help us like train our staff and to teach our staff and then teach our children and our seniors. You know, we hire young folks. They're still in college and they're still learning. So being able to get those those partners who have the experience, who know what needs to be done and can teach. That has helped us a lot be able to provide the programming that otherwise we would not be able to provide.
Definitely. And you've done a little bit of work with Farm to School as well, Laura. Can you share a little bit about that? Like, what are some of those impacts that you're seeing from that programming that you've done?
So we received a grant. It was called the Wellness Hub Grant. And we were able to receive $90,000 in grant funds. It was kind of a funny thing because at the time our director was like, oh, let's feed our after school program. And so we got the grant and we got started, and it was like, oh, you know what? You can't buy food with this grant. It's the one thing you can't do. And that was the one thing we wanted to do, is we wanted to provide food. And it's like, okay, so how creative can we get this? And they're like, so I was like, what can we do? And so I'm like, can I buy a stove? Can I buy a Vent-A-Hood? Can I buy gardening equipment? So what we did is we were able to take that $90,000. We built an ADA garden with 14 beds. It's a wellness garden, so it also has in the center of it a pond, so it's also mental wellness. It has a waterfall, so you walk in there and it's immediately serene. But we were able to do that and then take a space in the rec center and build a kitchen, a room that was just pretty much our dance room, but we wanted to keep it still our dance room. So if you walk into our kitchen, it's like you're in a lounge. It's in one of our rec centers, and the kids love it because they can go up on stage and they can sing karaoke and go over and make a smoothie. So it's been really, really nice that we were able to provide that for them. But it was because of that grant. We actually can do farm to table during our programming. So they can go out to the garden. They can plant our salsa beds is what we started out with, and then they can bring it into the rec center and then learn to can it. And then our next step is we hope to take it out to the farmers market. So that has been one thing that has really benefited our programming, and the families just love it. So it's been very fun to see.
Love that. Love that. Lynn, yeah.
So RGV Meat Producers has experienced a lot of technical support from UTRGV SARA group that Jose is representing. And honestly, I don't think we would have known about a lot of the grants that were available, just by research and finding that. But applying for the grants and getting through that paperwork has been a mountain worth of stress and just everything that comes with it. And so being able to have the technical support of people who have experienced these grants and grants like it, and being able to write in the words that they know other people will understand, and hitting those key words to get that attention from some of the readers and things like that has definitely been very helpful to us, because we are, farmers and things like that. We don't quite understand the technical terms and how to meet those marks. So that's been very helpful, receiving that help. They also got us in touch with other groups like Kitchen to Table Consultants, which was also a really good help for us. We were able to create a business plan and get a market study done for ourselves through that. And that was also a grant that UTRGV SARA was able to get themselves and share with us through that. So that was really amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lynn. And Jose, SARA has lots of great resources, and I know that you mentioned you all are also working on the Rio Grande Colonias Regional Food Business Center. So what is the RFBC, the Regional Food Business Center, trying to do to help address some of this grant writing and grant administrative burden? What's some of the coordination that we're trying to assist with in that area?
Well, you mentioned one of the three pillars being coordination, but the other two are technical assistance and grants it's capacity building in the form of grants. So this program has its own grant component, and as Lynn was saying, sometimes the application requirements are not super obvious and clear. And so that's where a technical assistance provider can really help in breaking down the process or the rules. And so the RFBC is really trying to, RFBC meaning Regional Food Business Centers, is trying to bring these three things together and have the technical assistance to help with not just applying for grants, but all types of issues that small farms may face. Sometimes it may be record keeping or compliance or marketing. So it can be pretty broad, but in the end, it's all under the umbrella of coordination and using pieces that already exist when possible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jose. Hilda, is there anything you wanted to add? Any effective collaboration that either Feeding Texas or through the RFBC you're aware of?
Yeah, the one thing that I'll add, because I think that at the beginning when we started to put together the Rio Grande Colonias Regional Food Business Center, we had a lot of intentional conversations around who our target audience was. Who do we want to serve? And once we figured out who we wanted to serve, we built out from there. So then we decided, right, the application process has to look like this because we want to make sure that these folks, right, have access to that. And so I think that that's been just, like I said, really intentional. And yeah, and the way that we've designed it is that we have various working groups that are focusing on technical assistance, grant making, getting folks to market, right? Different aspects of the work and those processes, the whole organization. And I think it's also important to say there are about 50 people on the project in the RFBC, and we're scattered all over Texas. So it's a really huge coordination effort in and of itself for us to be continuously communicating with each other to better serve the populations that we want to serve.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hilda. Yeah.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah.
I have an example of an effective model of coordination. The one that comes to mind is food hubs and this aggregating of the small farms that may not be big enough to send an entire truck somewhere. So I've seen this as a viable option for small farms that can consolidate their product when it's ready to sell and then save on the shipping costs. Or it can also mean sharing space. You know, there can be a processing facility where several farmers are using the resources and the infrastructure, and they don't all have to make this big investment. So just wanted to mention that as a good model.
Definitely. Thank you, Jose. Thank you. And SARA has great programming. If you're ever interested in getting together a co-op, they have a training I heard that's coming up in San Antonio. If you need more information, go to the SARA booth. Thank you, Jose. So there are resources out there, right? And sometimes, as Lynn was pointing out, it's about the awareness of the resource and then the administrative burden of applying for a grant, of maintaining your grant, of reporting on the grant, right? There's so many different resources out there, but how navigating them can sometimes farmers and ranchers don't have as much time, or they don't have enough staff that can help with that administrative burden. So there's tons of great resources. And I know that the RFBC is trying to coalesce some of those and make those easier to understand. And we're trying to make as Hilda was saying, our grant application process a little bit more streamlined, a little bit simpler. So of those underutilized resources that are available to producers in the RGV, what are some of the ways that those of you who are on the stage, that we can better connect those resources to the folks in this room and beyond that need them?
Well, I think that's kind of one of our biggest problems overall, right? Is even with our programming, getting the word out what we're doing. So I think it's just the marketing campaign, and it has to go deeper than than what we've ever done. And what that looks like, I'm open to any suggestions because it is a problem. It is a problem. We do a community camp out, and we have a lot of programs that people never even know about. So I think it is an issue getting information out, and it's still something we're trying to figure out. I know that a lot of people don't do Facebook. A lot of people, they're not watching the news anymore. They're not getting the newspaper anymore. Not everyone's on Instagram. Not everybody's on Facebook. So I guess just that's one of the largest challenges I would say that we would have is how to get the word out in what is available, what it is that is going to connect us all. So I would say, I guess it's back to the basics, right? It's word of mouth and going door to door. I hear that more when I first came to Brownsville. Like, oh, we go door to door with flyers. I'm like, you do what? That is like so dangerous. Are you crazy? But it's what works, and and I've seen it so many times that if you want to get the word out, it's either that you have to do word by word, or you have to really get out and hit the streets and tell the people what you're doing.
Definitely. And Lynn, how did you first hear about SARA? How were you introduced to their support services?
Yeah, so I was actually going to touch on that. She's absolutely right. Word of mouth really is kind of the way to go because if it weren't for other local farmers and having, the friend groups that my grandfather had, we honestly wouldn't have really heard about a lot of the opportunities. They did go to school at UTRGV back when it was UTPA, but so that also was helpful. But I do think that there are a lot of people out there that, they see the universities as more of an outlet for younger generations and for the generations that are actually going to school currently. And I don't think a lot of people know that there's opportunities there, even if you didn't go to, school there or you didn't go to college at all. And so I think advertising that and getting that out there would definitely be something that we need to hone in on. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lynn. And Jose, what are some of the ways that the RFBC is trying to reach some communities that are sometimes not reached when it comes to grant funding, folks that want to access grant dollars but, just aren't hearing about them? What are some ways that we've tried to approach that?
I think it's through partnerships with organizations that have been doing work in these communities much longer than we have. They understand the communities and they have built trust over time. So these partnerships have been important to reaching the communities that are traditionally harder to reach. But I will say I do agree that technical assistance providers are an underutilized resource. Before I was working at UTRGV, I was a client of the center, and it was also one of those things that I didn't know existed until one day at the farmers market. We randomly met a group of grad students from UTRGV, right there in the audience, and she's the one that told us about this center. So thanks, Katie. Other things we're doing is obviously just relying on the relationships that we've built over the years, the clients that we've worked with for a long time, because there is that trust. I think this work is really difficult to do if you don't have trust, and just delivering results and hoping that that spreads into bigger things.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jose. Hilda, is there anything you wanted to add on this topic?
Yeah, just around the BDCs, which you're a BDC, Jose. So we also designed a model where we have business development coordinators. They're individuals that are, as Jose described, right, embedded within community, have those important networks that can connect the resources of the RFBC to the businesses that we intend to serve. And I think that those folks are super critical. They might be out. I'm like, are there any BDCs in the room? I think they might be out in the hallway, but there's several present here today, and we've been intentional about placing those folks in the hardest to reach locations, right? So they're intentionally in Colonia communities in Texas and New Mexico.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hilda. And really, that's such a big part of it, right? Like you were saying, Jose, if we're trying to promote these grants and programs and resources that we have, we really need to think intentionally about what it means to build relationships and to build off of established relationships in those communities with what Hilda, I like a phrase Hilda's used previously, but community champions, right? If we're trying to reach communities, there are folks who've been working with them for a really long time, and a program like the Regional Food Business Center, our goal isn't to come in and just, try to do it all. The work is to be in community and to be in partnership with people who have been doing the work long before we started our grant program. So yeah, that's such an important piece of it. Infrastructure. Infrastructure is such a barrier for some folks, whether that's cold storage, transportation, broadband. What models or partnerships have you seen that successfully address these gaps? And I know that, Lynn, you have something that's up and coming that's meant to address this too. So yeah, what are some ways that we're trying to address these infrastructure pieces?
Yeah, so, honestly, I think we're not addressing them enough, if I'm going to be quite frank. I know, my group, the RGV meat producers, we're looking at units called Friesla units. And honestly, if you guys haven't looked into them, you should. They're very amazing units. They have just about everything and anything, and they're modular units that can attach. If you want to hear more about that, hit me up later. But yeah, so, they're really expensive, and infrastructure itself is really expensive. Being able to renovate it is very expensive. And I think that there's not enough resources out there that offer technical assistance for that and also financial assistance for that. Right now that we're looking at these grants, it's very structured. You have to pay for certain things with certain money, and there's matching funds and things like that really put a lot of restrictions on those things. So honestly, I would say I really think we need to better that and find some more funding that would be able to bring that infrastructure here, because we have the land, but we don't have the buildings and we don't have the money to build the buildings. And so, yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Hilda, I know that Feeding Texas is on the Rio Grande Colonias Regional Food Business Center for a reason. Can you share a little bit about how the creative way that you all are trying to approach supporting on the infrastructure piece in Texas?
Sure. So as you can imagine, because of the amount of food distribution that we do, as I said, it's 701 million pounds last year distributed. We have built a pretty extensive supply chain infrastructure. So we have a huge food storage capacity. So we have frozen, cold storage, regular warehousing, commercial kitchen space, as well as fleets that go everywhere, right? You go to every county in Texas. Some of the folks down here sometimes go to Mexico too. So there's a lot of distribution that's happening. And so our crazy idea, we hope it works, we really do, is that we want to leverage that food, that infrastructure to support small to mid-sized businesses. So we're on the project on the Rio Grande Colonias Regional Food Business Center to be able to provide that infrastructure either at low or no cost to businesses for a certain period of time. Our hope is that we'd either be able to help businesses maintain or scale up their business through our work with them. Right now we have 3 food banks that we're working with to design the model for usage, and that's South Texas Food Bank, the food bank of the RGV, San Antonio Food Bank. And the idea is that once we get that model hopefully solidified, we'd be able to go from one food bank to another, right? So we have food banks across the state, and so the idea is that we would hopefully be able to engage more food banks in support of the small and mid-sized farms. And I'll also take this moment to say that on a national level, we are very aware that we cannot do the work that we do without support to food producers. We understand that. I think that there's been explorations around how we can better support local food systems through the LFPA as an example. But now that funding has gone away, we want to explore other options. We don't want to just, stick with the big ag picture. We want to be innovative and creative and think about how we can support local food systems.
Thank you, Hilda. And I know that LFPA funding has been cut, but can you share a little bit about what that program was and what were some of the successes that came out of that?
Yeah, so I came at the tail end of this work, but from what I understand, it's the local food purchasing assistance program, I believe it was called, and it basically enabled food banks and food hubs to purchase food from small to mid-sized farms. I think the success is that it started to get that, at least from a food bank perspective, it started to get us to have more conversations and buying directly from those producers. We started to also understand what it means, right? What the scale challenges are when you're a smaller producer. And I think the other challenge is just that the way that it was written was a little bit unclear, and so we had some challenges with getting folks to buy in the way we, which was unfortunate because this year we were really going to great strategies, and hold on a second. Okay, there we go. So basically we were dispersing, we got $30 million every year to be able to support small to mid-scale agricultural producers. And that, I think, was just really amazing.
Thank you so much, Hilda. Jose, is there anything you wanted to add on success in the infrastructure realm?
It's probably too soon to use the RFBC as a success story, but I feel like it's the right idea. The conceptualizing of this program is a good thing, and we just need a little bit more time to show that it works.
So I would like to just mention that Brownsville's cannery is going to be opening soon, hopefully, right? And that infrastructure will help a lot of small farms be able to utilize that space. If they don't have a commercial kitchen, they can go in and use that space and be able to prepare their items for farmers markets or whatever it is they want to do. So I think we're on the right track in providing that space. It's going to be a really nice farmers market, right? And then it'll have the big commercial kitchen and then 2 small commercial kitchens. So I do think that we are on the right track to offer some of that infrastructure to help some of these smaller farms be able to get on their feet, yes, without putting out the big bucks and then it'll allow them to build up to that where they're able to put in maybe their own kitchen.
Definitely. Thank you, Laura. Jose.
Sorry, I did want to mention, just building on Lynn's example from earlier, I think the cooperative business model is a really good solution for this sharing of resources, sharing of ownership, and of the decision-making process. So I'm really happy about that project, but it's worth exploring for a number of different scenarios.
Definitely. I mean, and we're talking about this, sharing of resources, sharing of space, and sharing of tools and equipment. And I think what naturally comes alongside that when people are in shared spaces, we heard one of our youth panelists mention the importance of third spaces in community building. And I think shared kitchen space, shared processing space, like all of that is an opportunity also for networking, right? Like that's, I think, something that has been touched on in a lot of the panels loosely is this idea of the importance of community, the importance of networking and shoring up our food system. So glad we're touching on that here as well. So next, kind of shifting a little bit, Labor shortages are a huge issue for farmers and ranchers. What practical solutions, whether local or policy level, do you see as necessary for building and retaining a strong workforce in the region?
I'd like to touch on this a little bit. I definitely think here in the RGV, we have a lot of agricultural purposes like the citrus trees and farms and a lot of animals and livestock. But it seems like a lot of people have to leave the RGV in order to get the education they need to apply that to the RGV. So I kind of think it's a little counterintuitive that, you know, people are having to leave the area just to be able to bring those skills back to the region. I think if, you know, the UTRGV or other colleges or school systems here in the area could offer more programs to teach, you know, people either continuing education classes or just the bare necessities it takes to, you know, homestead or be able to utilize the land that people have or are inheriting over time and things like that. Yeah.
Definitely, thank you, Lynn. And also, and better marketing the programs that do exist, right? Like we keep touching on that. There are good resources, but we need to double down on our marketing and, and making sure folks are aware that there's great things. Other thoughts around labor shortages and what can we do at a local or policy level to be creative around addressing those issues?
I think it's wages, right? I mean, we have to take a look at the lower, you know, Rio Grande Valley. The wages are much lower than if you go other places within the state. So I think taking a really close look at that, and I know that the city as a whole, you know, they're doing better as far as they're doing research and getting our folks to a level that is a little more comparable to the area. And so I think more companies, if they could possibly do that, would be very helpful. But it's hard, right? I mean, money is really hard to come by. So more grant money for salaries, I was able to do that. I was able to get a full-time position by applying for a grant. It was very helpful. So looking for those grants that will pay for salaries will be very beneficial. Yes. And health insurance.
And health insurance. Thank you. Jose or Hilda?
I agree with the wages component. I don't know what that would do to the price of food, but I really hope we figure out a way to make this valued and dignified work, because otherwise somebody's going to figure out how to automate and replace farm workers, and I don't think we'll be better off at that point.
Thank you, Jose. Hilda, is there anything you wanted to touch on this topic?
I just started thinking about the Bracero program too, right? And just, you know, thinking about the mass deportations that are happening right now and how that's going to impact our farming community, our food businesses in general, not just our farming community, and just what we can do about that. So I'm like, I don't know, it feels so complicated, you know, because it's like, I feel like the projects that have existed in the past have also been exploitative, right? So it's like we bring you in, we exploit your labor, and then you have to go back home after you've built your community here. And so I don't know what the perfect policy solution is, but I think there's one out there.
Certainly, and we're hopefully working our way towards what those solutions are. Thank you all so much for your thoughts on that. So we want to save time for questions, definitely. So we're going to get to this last question really quickly and then open it up. If you could redesign how support flows to producers in the RGV, what would be your first priority? And what would it take to get there? So what are those missing links? What's our number one priority in your mind, and what should we do about it?
To kind of touch on what Laura was saying, definitely marketing. Again, what that looks like, I'm not too sure, but yeah, marketing and getting those resources and knowing that those resources are available out there, yeah, it's definitely very important. Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. What else, folks?
this is one of those times I'm going to start talking before I have a fully formed, coherent thought. So I hope it comes together, but if I had a magic wand, I think the first thing would be to make sure that there's alignment in our broad long-term vision. I don't know how you would do this, but taking politics out of the process would be a good thing. Because if there's, and I don't know what that plan would look like, but I just know that if we could agree on a common set of goals and desirable outcomes, and there's some alignment between the head and the heart, that's how you get to action, you know? Like if the heart is in it, then you get to meaningful action. But right now it just feels like whiplash, going from one extreme to the next on what the important priorities are. So for farmers, it's hard enough to run your business, and then on top of that, have to think about the macro implications of the environment and the tariffs so just giving them a little bit of certainty and alignment, I think, would go a long way. And then maybe just also funding for education, and I mean more the consumer, because it also doesn't feel like small farms should have to compete toe-to-toe on price with big ag. So maybe supporting them through this, and I know it sounds naive, but we could put more value on the food that is grown locally, sustainably, and ethically, and it may not always have to be about who's got the lowest price. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Jose. Laura, Hilda, anything you all want to add here?
Well, I think one thing that's really affecting our farmers is our water shortage, right? So if we could find a way to figure that out, and how we can manage the water when it comes, so that we can be able to collect it better, maybe, and not let it just run off, and then be able to save it for those days that we really need it. And then more rain dances, right? Make sure we get more rain. So, but I would say water shortage is a huge concern.
Thank you, Hilda. Any?
I have two. I think the one idea would be, if I could make it happen, would be to have a large institution buy a bunch of farming equipment and then just lend it out to people that need it. The second would be to provide funds for free to startups. Because I do feel like, people want to get back into agriculture. They're trying to figure out how to do that. So just giving them that startup money for free, I think, would be my other dream.
Love it. Thank you so much. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Do we have any questions in the audience? Deanna was winking at me a minute ago. Can we get the mic to Deanna?
In every conversation, I almost jumped on your stage. I think what you're doing here in the Food Summit and last year is step number one. Getting the city, the universities, the nonprofits, and the farmers is extremely important. I just got into this business, and I realized that there's so much funding out there, but each of the funding was specific for whatever it was. And the puzzles are just not together. The universities are applying for something, the city's applying for something else, and then you have the nonprofits competing with each other to do something else. So what you're doing here is number one important. And then the second thing is, yes, shared use equipment, but it cannot be in one city. It has to be in many. You're not going to have someone with low income drive all the way to Brownsville to use your facility because they can't afford it, and time is important. Most of them have to work, and time is important. But if that same concept was in everywhere else, then they can do it. And then labor. Farm labor is needed. But I just was awarded a project that was, well, you had the laborers give suggestions, the workers give suggestions, the nonprofits give suggestions, and I was blessed with one of those awards, and then this administration has a hold on it. I'm going to tell you my study regardless. I have 8 Guatemalan workers that I got on this award. And it has made a world of difference. But it cost me a fortune to apply for that application, to fly them over here, to house them, to give them work for a pilot project. And I said, oh my God, if I can get a US citizen and pay them this salary and bring them over to my house and give them housing and do all the things that I'm doing for somebody else from another country, how come? Because the Department of Labor doesn't respect the farming industry. And for 8 years, my name has been listed on their thing to have employees, and they have training money, and they do not suggest it to those folks. We can do this. The farmers need that labor. We cannot expand without labor. Saul and I could only do this little bit without help. So maybe we should figure out how we as an organization can poke those people, poke the cities, poke the nonprofits, poke the universities, work together, not just once a year, maybe once a month, and see how we can use funding properly for our organizations here locally and make a difference. Because I think that's what we need. We need labor, we need infrastructure, we need marketing, and we need working together, both city, universities, nonprofits, and farmers. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much, Deanna. Thank you, thank you. I felt your energy. Every time you wanted to jump up on the stage, I could feel it. I could feel it. Yes, do you have a question for our panelists?
Right, yeah. Question for Hilda. So you talk about the feeding Texas, right? So you're saying the 30 million. Recently, the LFPA program and LFS being canceled for LFPA 25. So is there any other like a replacement plan in the works? Or if nothing happened, then your organization has any wherewithal to set aside or earmark some funding for the food bank and school district?
Yeah, so right now we don't have any information that indicates that it's just going to come back. So what we've been starting to do is starting to have conversations with funders. But the amount of money that we got from the USDA is not it's irreplaceable. We can't generate that much funding through private donations. But we're gonna try, and I think as I talk to other people, other school districts that are very distraught, right, because they were thinking that this money was coming. It seems like people are just doing that private fundraising effort on their own too, for now. And we hope that the new administration will come up with something that we can use in the future. But for the time being, yeah, there's no guarantees from them.
Thank you, Hilda. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. I wanted to first introduce myself. My name is Curtis Elke, and I come from Washington, D.C. I'm the regional conservationist for the 12 central states of the United States for USDA and RCS. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I want to thank you all for coming together and for supporting each other as much as you do here. And we need you. We need you all, doing and feeding a growing world out there. The Natural Resources Conservation Service, we happen to be celebrating our 90th birthday on April 27th. and we're very proud to say that, and we're glad that we can help. And our mission is helping people help the land, but it's also farmer first. And our new Chief Betancourt, says that a lot, farmer first. So what that means is that we're trying to make our programs easier, friendlier, simpler for everybody to participate and have the opportunity to participate in our programs that we have. And so I just want to let you know that we have your back, and we want to work with all of you as much as we possibly can to feed a growing world and community out there. And I'm just so very grateful to be here today with you all, and I'll be around for a while if you have any questions for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much. He's easy to find. He's got a great cowboy hat on, so you know where to look. Any other questions from our audience? Yes.
I've sort of formed it. It's still actually building in my head. I'm actually not a farmer. I'm a chef nutritionist, and I'm converted almost my entire front yard to an entirely edible. And I'm supplementing it locally with Yahweh, and I absolutely love doing that. My problem with my clients is educating them on what I'm producing with completely organic meal preps for them. I've priced it the same as if you go to Chick-fil-A, so it's $15, and you get about 5 or 6 different things in the meal. And I've developed it to be gut healthy and all of that. It's still a challenge to get them to see the value, even though it's organic, it's local, it's from RG farmers, or RGV, excuse me. Education is still a really big challenge there. So I'm listening to everybody today, and it sounds like we really do need to do from the ground up. So we need to be in the schools giving them organic food and teaching them why that's important. So, you know, my little chef area wouldn't be as, it's almost like I have to coach them and teach them as well. So in your colleges, are you guys feeding them the food that you guys grow?
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
In the colleges, the food that you're growing, are you feeding them with your food? Are you teaching them there how to eat that? Is that in your cafeteria?
I don't think the hub produces enough for the entire university, but it's definitely part of the plan there. And I will say, I don't know if Rocio is in the room here, but Idea Schools is starting way younger. They have farms in their schools, and a really cool program to start, you know, in kindergarten or first grade. But I'm afraid I don't know exactly how much of the food that the university consumes is grown there on campus, but that's the idea, that, you know, the students get to see the whole process.
Okay. That's my struggle on providing as a food business, is still educating them. So that's my 2 cents. Is I would really love to see it at a younger age and then just keep going. It'd be beautiful.
And I completely agree with you. I think we need to figure out how to get people to put more value on these things, because there are a lot of hidden costs with the traditional methods of agriculture, and if they're not accounted for, then we're always just going to be stuck on price.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there was a program, I don't know if you were in this call, Jose, that I heard about recently, where young children were given, they took a field trip to a farmer's market. Little kids, I think they were like kinder and first grade, and they were given an allotment of coupons, and so all the vendors knew the value of the coupons, but this is so kids didn't have to count out quarters. But there were really cool outcomes from that, and I think there are creative ways, right, that we can start that really young and teach kids that things don't just appear on the shelves at grocery stores. Going to a farmer's market, they're meeting the farmer, and there's lots that can come from that. Other questions? Yes, Deanna, you already have the mic. Love it. Let's go.
I forgot. because it was more of a comment than a thing. I really think that the LFPA was well thought of. I didn't think it, I wasn't impressed by the process of because it started out well. It did start out well. I had farmers that actually were taking animals to process and selling it through the food bank, and I thought that was fantastic. And I convinced a lot of them to start ramping it up, and then they didn't want to buy from them. So that was very disappointing. So when the organizations put out programs, they have to be very cautious because farmers don't have money to lose. The margin is very little. And like the LFP, Stephen and I are friends, and we, you know, the whole idea of getting the H2s was the LFPA. We were going to ramp it up, right? And we were going to have all this product for the common market and for the schools and for yada yada. And then it didn't happen. So when we as an organization, as a community, caution when you do that, because the farmer is very vulnerable. They already have issues with climate. They already have issues with people competing with their prices. They already have issues with labor. So if we make commitments, we need to really focus on those commitments to the farmers. So I ask you, it's not a question to you, that when you make your plans and you do your grants and you do all that, that you think of the farmer first. What do they need, not what does your organization need? Because you're asking the farmer to do something and they're taking a chance to be with you to do it.
Thank you so much for that, Deanna. Yeah, definitely. And so much of that comes from like building sustainability into programs beyond their life cycle. I know that's something the RFBC is mindful of, and other programs are as well. And then, you know, brainstorming what we do in the absence of a program, you know, or when it's kind of suddenly cut. How do we build off of the networks that came from that program, right? Like there were tons of great relationships that were built with Feeding Texas through LFPA. I think that's something we can lean into, right? Is the connections that these programs are building. And other questions. Bella, how much more time do we have? We have maybe one more question. Beautiful.
Hi, I don't have a question as much as just a commentary, and going to the question that you had and kind of the experience that we've had in the community producing the magazine, I think, and the fact, so Edibles like a national local food entity, so every week we have a call with all the publishers that are nationwide, and we're all hearing what they're doing. And for someone that was born and raised here and then came back after living away for a really long time, I think something to understand is we're kind of really behind the curve, right? That's one component. Scenarios like this definitely do help. The unique part of where we are is you have our culture mixed with the socioeconomic components, and at times they complement each other and at times they clash more often than not, right? And so what we find I think you were listing, right? You are sourcing locally, you are doing organic, you had two other ones. And I turned over to Sammy Joe and I was like, unfortunately, the majority of the demographic here doesn't value that. And so part of that, and obviously I think this is where we come in, is this idea of storytelling and explaining the why, right? Explaining the why that's important. There are a few edibles that produce kid content, specifically in partnership with school districts. And so what that tends to happen is a school district, Region 1, or an individual school district goes out to get an education grant where we are then producing kid content that's like, meet your farmer. Where's your tomato coming from, right? Those things that are local. And if the student panel is proof of anything, they will then go home and tell those stories. And they will then start asking those questions. And it's interesting, the kid doesn't have the pocketbook, but the kid almost directs where the money is spent when the money is available more than the parent will. And so for me, I was very lucky to grow up in an environment where my dad was French, so he valued things very differently into where things, we ate seasonally, we ate locally, we ate all those components. I did not value it as a child. I moved away, and then now I can remember walking in Central Market in Dallas a few weeks ago, and a dad is telling his daughter, why do you want to buy this? Because, Dad, everyone at school is eating it. And he's like, have you read the ingredients? And she's like, no. And she's like, well, I don't think it's good for you, honey. And I walked by and I was like, good job. Like, really good job. Because it's hard to be that parent. It's easy to be the parent that buys everything in the center of the supermarket. It's really hard to be the parent that's taking them to the farmer's market and showing them where their food's coming from, right? And so I think it goes back to storytelling, to explaining the why, and then to understanding those hidden costs that do go into it. So seeing how we in our community can start telling those stories.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that brings us to our time. Thank you for the great questions. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing your expertise and your work with us. And thank you all to being here. Really, so much of this building better coordination in the food system is you coming to events like this, you telling your friends and other farmers and ranchers in your communities that resources like this exist. And I feel like that's part of how we address some of this. So thank you so much.